in Kogi early tomorrow.
That's correct. And the entire senior citizen crowd.
Looking forward to it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Namaste, assalamu alaikum. Good evening, good night, or good morning to all of you. We are so pleased to have people at this meeting from all parts of the world in different time zones. I am Nizam Mohammed of Trinidad and Tobago, a teacher for the past 17 years. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the 270th edition of our ICC Thought Leaders Forum. We wish to sincerely thank all of you who have contributed in whatever way to the success of this ongoing Indo-Caribbean and Pan-Indian Diaspora Global Project. For 269 unbroken continuous weeks, we have been here every single Sunday. And in the past 5 years, 2 months, and 2 weeks, we have featured 1,299 presenters from all parts of the world, speaking on 269 topics. This is a weekly forum being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center, a legally registered research and publishing company operating since 2010. And in order to continue this weekly program and to make it bigger and better, we are kindly asking for suggestions and volunteers. If you give your donation, your name will be placed on our poster and all promotional materials, and you can contact Dr. Kumar Mahabir for details. I'll introduce our moderator today, who is Nizam Mohammed, the co-director of this ICC Zoom platform, who is a business teacher and researcher from Trinidad and Tobago. She obtained her master's degree in business psychology from Franklin University in the USA. Shalama, welcome. I'm not hearing. Shalma, are you able to unmute? Okay. Are you hearing me? Are you hearing me, Shakira? No, you are not. You are not. You have to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Namaste and a warm welcome to all of you from the beautiful Johannesburg in South Africa. We are so happy to be here, and we have lots of friends with us in South Africa who are on the chat right now. So I'm so looking forward to meeting you all, especially Kogi tomorrow morning. Very bright and early, we'll be in Durban. I'm really looking forward to it. I want to thank you so much for choosing to be here with us. This program is being recorded on Zoom and live streamed on the YouTube channel of the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center. Welcome to all of you on YouTube at this time. To avoid intrusions from trolls, nothing has changed. Our IT manager has muted everyone. Speakers, please do not admit anyone, do not unmute anyone, and do not allow anyone to share your screen. Thank you so much for your cooperation. At this point in time, I just want to share with you that today is a very special day for people in Trinidad and Tobago. Hence the reason we are talking about personal experiences of the 1990 attempted coup in Trinidad. In 1990, an extremist group called the Jamaat al-Muslimin unsuccessfully attempted to overthrow the government of Trinidad and Tobago. On this very day, July 27th, members of the group stormed the parliament, which was convened at the stately Red House, the seat of our democracy. The then Prime Minister, Arthur Napoleon Raymond Robinson, with cabinet members, other officials, and staff at the Red House were taken hostage. The group, led by Imam Yassin Abu Bakr, a former police officer, stormed the single television station that we had at the time, TTT, and used that media to declare to the nation that he had overthrown the government. After 6 days of negotiation, largely by one of our speakers today, and a national curfew, the insurgents surrendered in exchange for an amnesty, though the legality of that amnesty was later contested. The 1990 attempted coup remains one of the most significant events in the nation's post-independence history, and our esteemed panel of speakers today will share with you why that is so, as well as their personal experiences. We begin with Mr. Nizam Mohammed, the Speaker of the House of Representatives at the time. He was not present in Parliament that evening when 42 armed members of the Jamaat al-Muslimin tried to overthrow the government. Unavoidably, he is absent today because he is at that very place, the Red House, where a wreath is being laid in memory of the event. So Mr. Mohammed has done a pre-recorded presentation, and we'll share that with you now.
I have a young lady here with me to assist me if there are any technical matters that come up with respect
Terrific. So we're recording now, okay?
Yeah.
Now, in our conversation a couple of days ago, you did mention that you were not at the seat of Parliament on July 1990 when the Parliament was stormed. Would you mind sharing with us where you were and how you came to know that the Parliament was stormed?
The 27th of July, 1990 was a Friday, and that was the day of the week when the Parliament would usually convene and there would be a sitting of the Parliament. So on that day, there was in fact a sitting of the Parliament. And we convened at 1:30 p.m. and I was presiding in the House. And at 4:30, there was a debate going on. We broke for tea at 4:30, and we resumed shortly after 5 o'clock. I had to travel 2 days after that to Belize to attend a parliamentary conference there. So I was making some arrangements for travel, and the Deputy Speaker presided over the resumed sitting at around 5:15 or thereabout. And since I had to travel, I decided that I will continue making those arrangements, and he will carry on with the sitting that was actually taking place. I left the Parliament building, and it was near to 6 o'clock, and I was heading to South Trinidad, where I resided, and I still reside there. And on my way down, I stopped at a mosque to meet with a visiting Muslim cleric. He was visiting from the United Kingdom. And while I was at that mosque, someone came to the mosque and said that there was a major disruption in the Parliament, and that the Jamaat al-Muslimin, which is a Muslim organization in Trinidad, had stormed the Parliament headed by one Yassin Abu Bakr, the leader of that small community, and they had actually taken over the Parliament. So there was a lot of commotion in a situation like that. You will find that information is difficult to come by because everything had virtually broken down.
How did you feel at that moment?
It was a very, very shocking piece of news. And we knew nothing of the sort, or rather never contemplated something like that taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. Our parliament was very, very weak in terms of security because we never saw the need for any kind of serious security in our parliament. We had no resident security in the parliament. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service would provide security when we were having sittings. Today, you have security arrangements and you have resident security personnel who actually look after the general security of the Parliament building, unlike 1990.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very shocked and at what had taken place. And in a situation like that, you don't know what to do. So that I was there in the mosque and I was told that I should go home and so on. I headed for my home, and there's where I was trying my best to actually follow up what was taking place in the parliament.
And what means were there available to you to follow up what was happening?
Little or no means, because by the time I got home, I discovered that the members of this group had not only disrupted and taken over the parliament, but they had stormed the police headquarters in the city, Port of Spain. And more than that, at that time, we had only one television station in Trinidad and Tobago, and they had also taken over the television station. So that in that kind of setting, there was little or absolutely no information flow taking place.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a terrifying experience that Trinidad and Tobago was going through, because we were never prepared for a situation like that, on the one hand. And on the other hand, Trinidad and Tobago, since 1986, 4 years before, was going through some rather difficult economic period, with a lot of economic challenges. And the government was changed in 1986, and the new administration, upon getting into office, discovered that the Treasury was in a total mess. So that we were actually going through a very, very difficult period. I had known the people in the Jamaat al-Muslimin. I had an excellent relationship with them. Me being a Muslim myself, I had good relations with all Muslims, and they were no exception. So I did not know that there was any reason to warrant such a dastardly act, to perpetrate such an act on the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because you attack the parliament, you attack the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the very seat of democracy. And it is a terrible thing. So I did not know that there were any really serious and pressing issues, except that this community occupied a parcel of land in the city, and it wasn't a large parcel of land either, maybe 1 acre or 2 acres, if that much of land.
By this community, you mean the Muslimin, the Jamaat al-Muslimin.
The Jamaat al-Muslimin, yes.
Right.
And they were occupying these lands, and they had inherited those lands from another Muslim organization that was given this piece of land for development of the community, Muslim community. And that organization had moved out, and the Jamaat al-Muslimin had moved in to this piece of land. So it was just a matter of regularizing their status, since it was a community organization. And I could not really comprehend the reason for such drastic action that they had taken.
Is it that they were going to be, were they going to be evicted from that land?
No, there was, I do not think that they were going to be evicted, but there were some serious negotiations taking place. And it was a question of whether they will occupy part of the original lands allocated to the previous organization, to remain in the part that they were actually in occupation, and give up the rest of the lands, because it's extremely valuable lands, and it was owned by the government. So at the time when they struck, the negotiations were being actively pursued by the government through its ministries, so that it did not reach to a head where there was a deadlock to justify that sort of action.
Mm-hmm. So may I ask, following the coup attempt, what happened to that land? What is the status of that land today?
The status of the land remains the same, because government had no intentions of evicting Jamaat al-Muslim. They had established a community where they had people residing on the lands, and not only people residing there, they established institutions, community institutions.
So there's a school there?
Schools like...
The masjid?
Schools. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I realize it's your phone.
I have now taken it off. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right.
Yeah. Where were we?
So we were talking about what is on the land.
They had established community organizations like a masjid. And in establishing that masjid, they had national support of Muslims all over the country in actually building a beautiful masjid. They also established preschool buildings, and I think there was also a primary school. So that it was a community organization that was doing something for the Muslims in the city particularly.
So that would be predominantly Afro-Muslims.
Predominantly Afro-Muslims, and predominantly Afro-Muslims who had come into Islam previously, prior to this attempted coup that took place. Yes.
Did you know Yassin Abu Bakr, the leader of that attempt? Did you know him personally?
Yes, I knew him personally, and as I say, I had there were open lines of communication between Yassin Abu Bakr and I, and me being the speaker in the parliament, and also at the time an elected representative, a member of parliament, a sitting member of parliament for a particular constituency, you are at the disposal of the public. So that there were open lines of communication between Yassin Abubakar and me. I remember a year or so before, there was an international conference, and they asked me to come there and to participate in the conference, and I went and I participated at the inauguration of the inaugural sessions of the conference. And at that time, the Libyan government had sent representatives at that conference, so that there were links between Jamaat al-Muslimin and the Libyan administration. Prior to this coup as well, the attempted coup, Yassin Abubakar claimed that he was the recipient of a shipment of pharmaceuticals from Libya. And the government felt that something like that ought to have taken place at a government-to-government level, rather than at the level at which it was being done. And the government objected to such gifts coming into the country in that manner.
So was it turned away? Did we receive it? What happened to that shipment?
They did not receive it because the government objected to the shipment being forwarded to Trinidad and Tobago. And that created some dissatisfaction.
Okay. So did you?
With the Jamaat al-Muslimin, they were dissatisfied with that decision of the government. So that the relationship between the government and that organization became somewhat strained at that stage.
So may I ask
you can speak a little louder, please.
Yeah. Your as you sat back, your volume became a little bit too low. So if you don't mind, can you just respond a little bit louder to this particular question? Did you have an occasion to speak with Yassin Abubakar after that failed coup attempt?
After the incident? After the incident.
Did you have any occasion to speak with him?
No, I had no occasion to speak with him. He and it was 113 other members of his community. And they were all incarcerated. And they faced a trial and that took a considerable length of time.
Yes. So may I ask you, if you did have an opportunity to speak with him directly after that, what would you have said to him?
What I would have said to him? I think that I would have said to him that I was totally outraged by what he did to our country. I am by profession, I'm a lawyer. I'm an attorney at law. I was in active practice then, and I have been in active practice for the last 51 years. So I am a senior practitioner at the bar, and I was a very prominent politician, attorney at law at that time. And attorneys at law are under oath to uphold the Constitution and the law of the country. And that is not something that you tinker with. We are custodians of the constitution of our country
Mm-hmm.
and the rule of law. As a result of that, we have pledged our lives to defend the rule of law and order in our country.
Now,
So
there was a commission of inquiry into that event many years later.
yes,
What came out of the commission of inquiry?
too much later, right?
Mhm.
I intentionally did not participate in the commission of inquiry. I took a decision that it was pointless in me going to give evidence before that commission of inquiry. Although I would have had information that would have been of assistance
Mhm.
to that commission.
Mhm.
And the reason why I didn't, one, it was too late in the day. Two, I did not think that Trinidad and Tobago was sufficiently serious with respect to ensuring that something like that should not ever happen again. And more than that, that I do not think that they cared about the casualties.
You knew some of those casualties, right? Can you tell us something about them?
One lady, well, of course, members of staff at the parliament were terribly traumatized. One lady whose job at the parliament was to serve tea to the members when they're sitting and other people and so on she was working in the kitchen of the parliament, and she had little children. I think it's 3 or 4 little children, and she was shot and killed. And to this day, no one has thought it justifiable and necessary to look after the casualties. Policemen were killed. 2 policemen were killed. One on duty in the parliament. He was a very senior police officer, assistant superintendent of police. And one, I think it was a police constable who was killed at police headquarters. Mm-hmm. Police headquarters was bombed, mm-hmm. and the place caught fire, mm-hmm. seriously damaging the police headquarters, requiring personnel there to vacate that building. Mm-hmm. Was no longer inhabitable. The parliament was in a total mess. And I do not believe that Trinidad and Tobago, at the leadership level, actually looked at this incident with the seriousness that it deserved, and to come up with ways and means to avoid situations like that in the future, mm-hmm. and in the name of civilized living, to actually compensate people for the loss of life and for the injuries that some people suffered. When I left that parliament on that evening and I came down to where my vehicle was parked, there was a policeman on duty near to my vehicle, and he was the last one I exchanged pleasantries with before I left the compound. And he lost his leg because he was shot in his leg and his leg had to be amputated. He's still alive today. I do not think that that gentleman got anything by way of compensation.
Yeah.
So in that setting, I thought that that commission of inquiry was a total waste of time. And with the passage of time, I think I have been proven that I was correct, because absolutely nothing came out of it.
Do you think, and we're just going to close up now, we have just about a minute again, do you think Trinidad and Tobago has benefited in any way from that coup?
benefited perhaps in the sense that in this day and age, not only with that coup, but with the situation internationally regarding the prevalence of crime. I think that that is a contributing factor. That attempted coup has been a contributing factor to increased security at all levels in the society. And I think that that's the only thing that that can be looked at as a benefit, nothing else.
But even with the increased security that we take, our crime rate is still extraordinarily high.
It is a worldwide phenomenon. However, I think that Trinidad and Tobago is too much of a divided country, which is perhaps one of the main reasons why we cannot have a concerted effort being made at the national level to tackle the problem of crime. I do not think that we are sufficiently serious, and I also believe that we are not sufficiently taking into consideration all the factors that contribute to the insecurity that exists in the country.
Dr. Mahaber has a question. You're muted.
As a Muslim and the insurrectionists being Muslimin, do you think they gave Islam a bad name? And
Obviously,
what
obviously.
way you differed from that group, because you yourself being a Muslim?
Obviously, I think that the Muslim community was affected and continues to be affected in very negative ways as a result of what transpired in 1990, 35 years ago. And we could have had some measure of atonement during that period of time if the Muslims on the fringes could actually convince the population that Islam does not have as its hallmark such violent approaches resolving issues, that there are civilized ways that can be utilized in order for us to have consultation. And all the guidelines are there in the Islamic teachings. It is just that you find you find perversion when people intend to use religion as an excuse for their nefarious acts of violence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's a good way to end the interview. So I want to thank you very much for giving us of your time today. Really
sorry,
appreciate.
I couldn't be. I couldn't. I don't know. I say I'm sorry. I can't be live on your program.
So, as you heard it, unfortunately, Mr. Nizam Mohammed is not here with us, and unfortunately, therefore, Jay, I see your hand is up, where we would have liked to take questions as well from members of the audience. We are unable to do that at this time, but I want to say thank you very much to him in absentia for giving us his personal testimony. So thank you very much. Let's move on to our second speaker now, and this is someone who played an integral role in restoring democracy to Trinidad and Tobago. This is Professor Winston Dookeran. During the July 27, 1990 attempted coup in Trinidad as a minister in the then NAR government, he was also held hostage, but he played a key role in negotiating with the insurrectionist group on our behalf, and we are ever so grateful for it. Winston, welcome, Professor Dookeran. Professor Dookeran, can you unmute your mic, please? Okay, he may have dropped out of the Zoom room so that we will contact him and reestablish that link. Let's move on to our third speaker then. One moment, please. I want to welcome Mr. Mirza Ali Mohammed, an adjunct faculty at the University of the West Indies, Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business, and president of the Islamic Dawah movement. He's also a well-known lecturer on Islam and Muslim affairs. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasant good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever we are. I know we have time differences. So greetings to everyone. I'm going to share my slides, and I was asked to speak about the issue of Indo-Trinidadians in the 1990 attempted coup. Can you just somebody just confirm you're seeing the slides, please?
Yes, we are.
Okay, good. So I basically want to deal with two issues. One is the rationale for the attempted coup, and my brother Nizam, in fact, highlighted some of those. And the reason I wanted to mention that is because I wanted to make the point that the attempted coup really was not a religious doing, but it was really more because of socio-economic issues. So it's important for us to understand that background and rationale. And then, of course, the Indo-Trinis in the coup, there were a few of them. Some of them were in the parliament, and some of them were in TTT, the Trinidad and Tobago television. And we'll look at some of those names and who played key roles. So Imam Yassin Abu Bakr, he was able to influence his congregation with some of his ideas. The ideas, of course, would have come from the Quran and from the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And like any other Muslim, they would have been influenced by these two sources. He was a Muslim. He believed in the principles espoused in the Quran and by the Prophet Muhammad, like all Muslims do. Brother Nizam just said so. I as well, and all of the Muslims anywhere in the world. But even though there's one Quran, one version of Quran, verses can be misconstrued, misinterpreted from its intended meaning. And therefore, this is why we recommend it's important to study religious books with credible scholars. The Imam Yassin was able to influence his followers and members of his congregation about his ideas of justice or injustice, as the case may be, and the importance of stamping out corruption, which in fact was an issue, as was mentioned. I mentioned a verse of the Quran and the saying of the Prophet Muhammad to show that these principles of wanting to get rid of injustice and corruption stems, in fact, in religious books. In our Islamic book, the Quran, it says, "O you who believe, stand firmly for justice, if even it be against your own selves." The Quran is encouraging people, wherever they are, in any era, from since the time of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 1400 years ago, until the day of judgment, we believe that this principle to stand up firmly for justice. In other words, where there's injustice, we have a responsibility. And there's in fact a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, which Imam Yassin would have quoted, and we would quote, where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "Whoever amongst you sees an evil, something wrong, you must change it with your hand," meaning physically do something. And if you're not able to do so, then you speak out against it with your tongue. And if still you're unable to do so based on your circumstances and so on, then you at least hate it in your heart. You may not be able to speak. You may not be able to have made any significant change, make any significant change. Therefore, you hate it in your heart. And that is the weakest form of faith. However, what the hadith means, or the saying of Prophet Muhammad means, is that if you have the authority to do so, the political authority, the positional authority, or any other authority you have. So it means not every Tom, Dick, Jean, and Babulal can say, "I see injustice in the community, I want to change it," and we do that and get in problems with the law. So one must have the authority to so do. So these principles of wanting to stamp out injustice and corruption will resonate and has resonated with any Muslim and even non-Muslims, regardless of ethnicity. So those people who were East Indians, Indo-Trinidadians, Normally, I'll say Indo-Trinbagonians to make sure we include Trinidad and Tobago, but we don't have any evidence of Tobagonians involved, so I will use the phrase Indo-Trinidadians. So these principles will resonate with people whether they are Afro or Indo, and therefore it was not a race issue, but they resonated with the issues. And therefore, to make the point, and Brother Nizam alluded to it, for societal change, for change to take place, the Islamic methodology says it cannot be by force. It is not as a result of a coup. Change doesn't come by force. Rather, the Islamic methodology is that it is built from the ground up. And our methodology is taken from the life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, where he worked on individual hearts and minds, and then families, and then small communities, and more communities, and more communities. And that is how change, in that way, you'll have voluntary acceptance of the change rather than forced or coercive means to provide change in the community. Therefore, the action of a coup is not something that is sanctioned by Islam. But I think more importantly, these were the reasons and the rationale that Imam Yasin had postulated for his attempted coup. Not so much all of these Islamic things. So there was corruption in the government. There was, in fact, a particular scandal that was existing at that time and being discussed in the parliament, the Tesoro scandal. He says that young black males were disenfranchised. He also felt that security forces were planning to invade the Jamaat al-Muslimin compound. They were in fact camped at a place very close to the compound, and he felt, it may not have been so, but he felt that they were going to invade, they were going to kill, and he in fact was saying things like that. The Tesoro scandal in Trinidad and Tobago refers to a major corruption and fraud case involving the state-owned oil company, Tesoro, during the 70s and 80s. And the scandal involved allegations of bribery, kickbacks, and misuse of public funds related to oil contracts and other business dealings. And the scandal led to significant political and public outcry. I said it was even being discussed in the parliament, investigations and legal proceedings. One of the other things that, according to an interview with Imam Yasin Abu Bakr, in spite of these things, or in addition to these things, he says the kicker or the straw that broke the camel's back was something concerning a lady called Jean Miles. She was a whistleblower of PNM corruption about something called a gas station racket. And in the name of Jean Miles, he says this really, caused a serious problem in his mind. The then government had decided to put up a permanent memorial to PNM corruption of appropriately historic proportions. And according to the Muslimin leader, in this interview, he says that was the thing that triggered me, if that is in fact so. And the reason he's saying is because it was inappropriate to put a statue of somebody who he deemed to be somebody of ill repute, somebody who was rumored to have had affairs with government ministers, etc., etc. So he felt there were more important issues. So therefore, the attempted coup played out against an arena of civil and social unrest in 1990. Trinidad and Tobago was in a state of economic depression. The then government, headed by Mr. Arthur N.R. Robinson of the political party, the National Alliance for Reconstruction, had to implement economic austerity measures, They stopped things like COLA, cost of living. And this particular measure was in fact just one of the consequences that the IMF said you had to do. The nation was already facing rising prices. Salary cuts came, guillotining of civil service jobs came. Large pockets of public were left dissatisfied with government performance. But in defense of the NAR government, they inherited some of this stuff. All the stuff we're talking about here, the dissatisfaction, they inherited. It was so bad that in 1986, when the general elections was held, PNM lost, they only retained 3 seats. And the NAR government, they in fact won 33 out of 36 seats. And that was a serious blow for the then government, the PNM government that is. PNM retained only 3 seats. The Lavantil seat by Muriel Donovan McDavidson, the Port of Spain East, I think by Maurice Marshall, and the San Fernando seat by Patrick Manning. Other than that, it was a serious blow for them. But it is indicative of the dissatisfaction that was happening in the community, the socio-economic issues taking place in the community. And as a result, people like Imam Yassin, his message of stamping out injustice, stamping out corruption, it resonated with Afro-Trinis, especially those disenfranchised, and including some Indo-Trinis as well, who joined him because they resonated with the message. So it was not really a race issue or even a religion issue. It happened to be Muslims involved, but it was more of the socio-economic factors that were existing at that time, the disenfranchisement of the Afro-Trinidadian young people at that time, the fact that the then government had to put some austerity measures in place. It was difficult. And then compounding that, a statue of somebody who was a whistleblower, somebody who Imam Yassin says was somebody of ill repute, he says it really was enough. The majority of the people who were in the Jamaat al-Muslimin had no knowledge of what was about to take place on that Friday evening of July 27. The knowledge of that initiative, of the coup, was really only in the minds and the heads of a few people who were the heads, the leaders, the senior leaders. The majority of the people had no knowledge of what was about to take place. So what about the Indo-Trinidadians in the coup? Last few slides. So at the Red House, there were some of them. There was somebody named Arman Abdul Samad, still around, Naeem Ali, Firoz Shah, and I'll mention him in a little while, Riyad Ali, who changed his name from Steve Chanika. He was a teacher at a prestigious school in Port of Spain, and Rahim Ali. These were some of the names that we know went to the Red House, and the Red House, in fact, was led by somebody named Bilal Abdullah. That is the insurrection was led by Bilal Abdullah, while at the Trinidad and Tobago television station, led by Imam Yassin Abu Bakr, we had people like Abdul Khan, Farooq Abdul, now deceased, Khalik Khan, Nizam Mohammed, and there was another name, I wasn't sure, so I didn't want to put his entire name, whether this was in fact so, but there was a possible another Indo-Trinidadian. Now, there are some key roles that I think were played by three of the names mentioned here. May have been more, but I'm sharing with you just three names of people who we think played some key roles. From the Commission of Inquiry report, it says the shipment of 200 firearms, 250,000 rounds of ammunition, two-way radio gear, radio base stations, and other equipment to Trinidad was arranged by an individual in the United States named Louis Hanif, and came down here to a particular consigned to a name. But more importantly, this slide, the point I want to make is that the weapons were shipped to Port of Spain, hidden by a pallet of hollowed plywood sheets. And it did not come through an illegal port. One of the Indo-Trinidadians named Firoz Shah was a customs officer. The weapons came through a legal port in plywood that had a cutout, and it was cleared legally by customs. Firoz Shah was one of those who took part in the attempted coup. He was also imprisoned like the 114, but he was the customs officer who allowed the weapons in. This image now, the one on the right-hand side I want you to focus on, the one marked TTT. You have Jones P. Madeira, a broadcaster. In the middle is Yassin Abu Bakr. This is when he was making an announcement the government has been overthrown and the elections will be called in 30 days. Next to Yassin Abu Bakr is this person, Indo-Trinidadian. He would have had to have had Imam Yassin would have had to give this guy some respect. So he's an Indo-Trinidadian and he's sitting on the television station next to Imam Yassin. His name is Khalik Khan. He was a businessman. He was a businessman then. We don't have the evidence of him funding anything, but we say God knows best. He's a businessman, has been and is a businessman, a respected businessman in the Muslim community then, one of the Indo-Trinidadians. The third one I want to highlight before I end is Nizam Mohammed. He's somebody who is quite influential. He is a motivator. He can inspire people by the way he speaks. He's passionate about when he speaks, topic he speaks about. When he was released from prison, he subsequently became an imam in Rio Claro. He set up his own masjid. Interestingly, from his masjid, several members of that particular Jamaat and masjid and family, they left to join ISIS. So was it that he inspired people? He was interviewed several times by different media. He claimed, I did not do anything. I gave my sermons, I gave my speeches. I did not have any significant influence. They left on their own. But interestingly, several people from his Jamaat, his organization, his masjid left and went. So he's quite inspirational. Whether he in fact motivated people prior to the incident, we really don't know. So therefore, the reasons for the attempted coup I'm submitting to you was really socio-economic issues to stamp out injustice and corruption and claims of intimidation by the security forces. The Jamaat al-Muslimin message attracted different ethnicities, mostly young Afro-Trinis, but it included some Indo-Trinis who also resonated with that message. And some Indo-Trinis played key roles, and I shared with you just 3 of them. Let me stop here. That's enough time I have. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone.
Wa alaikum assalam. Brother Mirza, I want to thank you very, very much for our well-researched and detailed overview of the possible factors that could have led to that decision by the Imam to stage the coup. I want to thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions at this time for Brother Mirza, please raise your electronic hand, which you will find in the reactions button at the base of your screen.
No questions, good, Shalima?
Not yet. It's coming. Jay Nair, originally from South Africa, now in Canada. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed, and the other gentleman's televised impression of what happened on that day. My question is, how did Libya get involved with this problem in the colony?
I don't think Libya was really involved in a big way in the economy. What happened was that Jamaat al-Muslimin established a link with the Libyan Coal Society under Muammar Gaddafi from a purely initially Islamic educational thing. So some members of the Jamaat al-Muslimin had traveled over a few years before the coup, and they in fact spent time studying Quran and studying Islamic studies, and I guess whatever else they were trained in. So it was an educational exchange. Jamaat al-Muslimin members went, they were trained, they came back in to educate their membership. So it wasn't a case of Libya getting involved in any significant way. However, Libya also wanted to get involved, as Brother Nizam said, in social relief. And as a result, they gave Jamaat al-Muslimin funds. They would have funded some things, including the shipment of pharmaceuticals. And also, I guess, would have provided the Jamaat with money, because the Jamaat would have been feeding poor people, would have in fact been doing some social work in the Port of Spain area. So as a result, people looked at Jamaat al-Muslimin leader Imam Yassin as a community leader. Even the politicians, some of the politicians viewed him as a community leader. He was feeding the poor. He was in fact getting them out of drugs. He was ridding some places of drugs. So in fact, he was doing something that was good for the community. Libya, however, I assume would have been the funder for some of these initiatives that he would have been doing to help and bring people out of the relief that they were in, especially the Afro-Trini who were disenfranchised.
So the people who took over the parliament, were they armed?
They were armed. So I said, as much as a number of weapons came through, where they stored the weapons, we really don't know. What we do know, and this is based on the Commission of Inquiry, weapons came in through the legal ports. They were cleared by somebody who was a customs officer. They were shipped from there, however, and they were stored in a particular place. After Juma on that Friday, after he gave his sermon, and his sermons were actually laced with things like stamping out corruption and injustice. After that Juma, whatever happened, the guns were made available, and the majority of the people we are of the view didn't have a clue what was about to take place, excepting the leaders. They were given arms. I don't think all of them would have had arms. they were given arms, but clearly they had some ammunition, and they were in fact they were transported by minibuses and other vehicles to TTT and to the Parliament building. Interestingly, even though just some meters away, the regiment in fact had a camp. They encamped there and they were keeping a look and they were monitoring the movement of the Jamaat al-Muslimin. And in spite of all of that, Jamaat al-Muslimin members were able to move in spite of all of that comfortably. Where the arms was, we don't know, and going to the Parliament and going to the TTT without being, picked up.
So why I asked the question is during the struggle in South Africa when we were fighting apartheid, Colonel Gaddafi did train and educate our freedom fighters.
Right.
And there were people who went up there, but it was merely support for the movement. So that is what we call the foreign interference in local politics. That's the sad part of it.
Yeah.
But in South Africa, it was a different situation. We want to depose a government which was, suppressing everybody, irrespective of. But with here, it was specific the Islamic League that got the support. They must have got arms and ammunition from there, and whether the agenda was to depose the country's government, nobody knows. But thank God, more lives weren't lost.
Yeah. But based on the Commission of Inquiry, there was no evidence that arms came from Libya. There's evidence that somebody named Louis Hanif in the United States, and this is based on US evidence, FBI evidence, and so on, that he, in fact, they traced where he purchased the guns, how he paid for the guns, how he came to Florida, etc. So whether the Libyan connection was through the United States, we don't know. What we do know is that the arms were purchased in the United States and shipped to Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow. There's still more to research.
Probably.
Thank you. Thank you. Interesting.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We have another question. This one is from Hebraj Ramdad. Why would they attack the NAR government when most, if not all, of the corruption mentioned were by the PNM?
Well, I guess the NAR government was in power now. PNM had already gone. I think people expected some change to the tree, and they're expecting some significant change for the rank and file people, disenfranchised people, the job cuts. Things were happening that people would not have been comfortable with. So I guess Jamaat al-Muslimin and even the civil servants who lost their jobs at that time, the people who lost their cost of living, are seeing before them this current government. Even though they inherited what went, this is the government we expected. 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989, 1990, 4 years have gone. We expect to see the country better. We were not seeing it better. And I guess because of that, Jamaat al-Muslimin and others would have, did what they did. So I suspect it's because this is the government in power and we are expecting better. 4 years have gone and we haven't seen the significant change that we expected to see. So we're going to respond and retaliate based on who we have in front of us.
Thanks for that. Another question from Imam Iqbal Haidal. Assalamu alaikum. Can you unmute your mic, please? Imam Haidal. Can you unmute your mic, please? Did we lose him? Oh, I think we may have lost him there. We're trying to do some technical clearance at the background if you're hearing background noises. Okay, I'm sorry. I believe he may have knocked himself out of the Zoom room. So, Brother Mirza, I want to thank you very much for being here with us and for sharing your insights. Joseph, who is going to be speaking shortly, is asking, could you shed any light on the Summit of the People's Organization?
So very quickly, SOPO was an organization that really was championing the downtrodden in the community. All right. And as a result, SOPO had a relationship with Jamaat al-Muslimin. They talked the same language. We need to lift people out of poverty. We need to be able to bring out the disenfranchised people. We need to help those people and bring relief. So SOPO, in fact, the rhetoric of SOPO was similar to Jamaat al-Muslimin, and therefore the organizations had some kind of relationship. But we feel SOPO had no news and no information that Jamaat al-Muslimin was going to do this. And based on the previous comment here, I think from Diana, you're very correct. This is why I mentioned that the majority of the people who even attended the Jummah on that day had no clue this was about to fall upon them or come. They were there, they were given a gun, they were given something and told, we are going to do this mission. And therefore the knowledge of this coup really was in the heads of just a few people. And SOPO was one of those that in fact was related to Jamaat al-Muslimin, but had nothing to do with the coup, even though they shared similar kind of understanding and rhetoric. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. And as well, I want to thank our very good friend, Brother Nasser Mustafa, for connecting us. Excellent presentation. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving on now to Professor Winston Dookeran. During the July 27, 1990 attempted coup, he was a minister in the then NAR government and one of those persons largely responsible for restoring democracy to Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome, Professor Dookeran. Are you able to unmute your mic?
No, you're talking from your phone.
Well, are you hearing me? I don't know.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, well, I'll just speak then. I am seeing my picture on the phone, but I don't know what's happening.
That's okay. Keep on talking.
You want me to go ahead?
Yeah, let him talk. That's so you
Go
hear me?
ahead, please. Yes. Yes. Go ahead, please.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I listened very carefully to what Nizam Mohammed said, as well as what Mirza said, both of which seem to have suggested that the socio-economic and political conditions in the country, they have triggered the coup itself, or the attempted coup. I must say, I do not hold to that view. I don't believe that those socioeconomic conditions were any different then, 10 years later, or even now. I believe this was really an act of a personal nature. Had in his mind that one day he will overthrow the government, and he will, in his own mind, introduce some kind of revolutionary. Are you hearing me? Are we on?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe that is what really was the source of the situation. And while I think Mr. Mercer gave a very good account of the political climate at the time, it was my view as one was involved in the day itself, in the
From here, not the Zoom.
September 27th itself. I wonder if we are getting through with this thing. Are we?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Go ahead. You keep on talking.
For me, it was a traumatic experience. I was in Parliament. We were indeed having a debate on what was called the Tesoro situation, which was a situation filled with all sorts of allegations of corruption. And at that point, on that Friday evening, to the consternation and perhaps surprise of everyone, this group of captors entered the parliament with guns, a lot of guns, and demanded that we who were in cabinet must go low, or else we might be shot. And immediately our hands were tied up, all those who were sitting in Parliament, and asked to go under the table. And that was the beginning of what it turned out to be a violent attempt to put government. During the entire night, we had to contend with gunshots from within and from without. And at very many occasions, I had to intervene in the sense of talking to the army outside at a gun on my neck, asking them to desist from that action. During the course of the night, Mr. N.R. Robertson, who was very defiant in terms of his unwillingness to concede anything, was shot. And throughout the evening, we had what I will describe as one of the most tense situations. Many of us, including myself, felt that we too will die in this process. We began by talking to the perpetrators, and I was the one who was pushed to do so by my good friend Emmanuel Hussein, who was sitting next to me in Parliament. And I told the person who came up to me that I wanted to talk. And it started a dialogue. The tense, violent situation began to move into a dialogue situation. It went on all night. And at various stages, there appears to be that this dialogue will turn into a complete catastrophe. And at every point during the night, I had to use whatever was possible to refuse the situation. Without going in all the great details that could only be done in a long discussion, there were several occasions when I had to diffuse the violence. My objective then was to open the door of Parliament to allow someone from outside to come in. I suggested to the captors that we bring in a mediator. They did not agree with the names I suggested. But when I did suggest Canon Clark, a well-known man of the cloth, they agreed. And therefore, during that period, we worked out what they said to be an agreement, what I said to be a list of demands. At the end of that, and this now was an early morning, I was released with this document in my hand, which they said was an agreement, which I said was a list of demands on their part. Included in those demands would be the fact that I myself should assume the position of Prime Minister in an interim government. Of course, to me, it was not a document that had any legal binding. And I was told to go and see if I could make it happen. So I was therefore released in the very early morning, Saturday morning, having gone through the ordeal for the entire night, having had to, on hundreds of occasions, diffuse the violence that was before us. Walk into the open pathway outside of Parliament alone. By that time, Mr. Nolly Clark had come. We left the parliament together, although we left in different places. And eventually, someone rescued me with a car and took me to the Camp Ogden, where the army outfit in the city was located. There I met my colleagues in the parliament, in cabinet, who were outside of parliament. And we started then the process of negotiation, as people call it. But it was not negotiations, it was really a strategy to be able to diffuse now the intention of the captors. At one stage, there was a feeling that the parliament had to be assaulted. And that's the only way the government can restore its legitimate position as the government of the country. The head of the army, Brigadier who was the head of the army, Brigadier Brown, I should have remembered his name right away, because he played an extremely important role in the entire exercise. I dissuaded them from going towards the assault approach. But I suggested that we find another approach. And here is where Brigadier Brown, using his connections, was able to convince his friends in Washington to send technical support for us. And we immediately agreed to do so. And a small team landed in Trinidad after due deliberations in order to help the security forces and the government to negotiate a solution to the impasse that has developed. They defined it as a hostage crisis rather than a coup attempt. And therefore they employed all the modern techniques that are available to such expertise to deal with the hostage management crisis. It took them 6 days, or rather 5 days, in order to be able to bring the situation to a head. At the end of it, the perpetrators surrendered. That was my second role. My first role was to have discussions in Parliament. My second role was to have discussions with my colleagues outside of Parliament in order to try and restore a sense of sanity in what was not only a tense situation, but one that was fraught with great dangers. After the surrender, my third role in this particular exercise was to then try and put the country back in order. Looting had taken place during the process. It was clear to us that there was no popular support for this event. Rather, there was an opportunistic response by some individuals who began a looting of the city and many of the businesses. So the conditions that I heard of earlier, in my view, had no influence whatsoever in either the event taking place or in eventually in getting any kind of support for it. To do so, we had to employ CARICOM troops because we hadn't been in touch with several governments, including the government of the United Kingdom, the government of Canada, Commonwealth countries, and the CARICOM governments via Jamaica, where a meeting was taking place at the time. Some of our cabinet ministers were out of the country. My job was to deploy them either back into the country or to some strategic place elsewhere. My Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Sadi Ubasti, was sent to Jamaica to meet with the CARICOM heads of government. The president of the country was abroad. We arranged for him to return and stay in Barbados until it was safe for us to bring him to Trinidad. And during that period, we began the process of restoring a sense of order in the country. I must say that I was moved by the support that was given by the communities in the country, the religious communities in particular, in all the religious faiths, for they rose to the occasion by providing comfort throughout the country, by the radio stations that were functioning, for we had no way of communicating to our people. And in so doing, they were able to calm the society. And of course, to the CARICOM countries who had sent armed forces to help us man the affairs outside. That went on for a while until we found it was possible. Nizam Mohammed spoke about having to extend the state of emergency which we had put into place and not having a place to hold parliament. And we did so in the auditorium of the Central Bank. Even then, there was tense situation. For it was felt and we were advised that there may have been a bomb located there. It turned out it was not so, but we had to go through the debate. We had therefore to ensure that the legal requirements were upheld. The country was put back on a state of calm. And when Mr. Robinson came out, he of course could not resume his position for some time to come. He had to be taken for medical support and care. During that time, my fourth role was to hold on then as acting Prime Minister until such time, which was a couple of weeks or months passed by for him to return. By that time, of course, the legal processes took place. I want to support the view that this insurrection was not religiously inspired. It may have used it to mobilize its people who came into parliament, but there was no evidence that it had any religious support. I want to also suggest to you that apart from that, the insurrection started as a coup attempt, but really became a hostage crisis. And I want to also say that we are able to seek support, technical support of the United States government and the CARICOM government in order to assist our security forces in order to bring back a sense of stability. At the end of it, I think it's fair to say that the country overcome the challenge, but at the expense of the loss of life, the ultimate cost of 25 plus people whose names were called earlier on, or rather whose names were identified, and they are now inscribed in front of Parliament. in the flame, the eternal flame. But they lost their lives. They paid the entire price. Many others would have had to face other costs. So it was not without major human cost, ultimate cost. It is a moment that I hope will never ever happen again in our country. But it's a moment in which I have said the nation had lost its virginity in politics. And in that sense, we have been left with some of the fallout of that, which is a continuing fight to restore the country to a level of safety. 35 years later, this event is now part of our history. All the legal cases have been resolved in different ways, not fully in my view. Many of the individuals who were involved are no longer with us. The armed forces played a heroic role in ensuring that there was order, as also ensuring that the particular insurrection did not end up in even more loss of life. I was very pleased when at the end of it all, an editorial in one of the major newspapers of the world, I believe in the United Kingdom, wrote that a small country like Trinidad and Tobago acted with great efficiency to resolve a violent attack on its democracy. So I'm pleased to add these dimensions as an eyewitness, as someone who was there at every stage in the process. And to say 35 years later, it is no longer an issue to be worried about speaking about, because it's part of history now. For many years, I myself have never spoken apart to this Commission of Inquiry that was set up, because it was fought in all sorts of legal complexities and laws. Many of these things have not been resolved. One final point I will make is the lack of willingness to take concrete action may have been due to the fact that many viewed this particular insurrection as an attack of the then government of the day, of which I was a part, and I was indeed not only the Minister of Planning, but also acted as Prime Minister throughout the occasion and before. Many did not see it as a bipartisan matter. I saw it from the very beginning as a matter beyond partisan politics. So I end here by saying I hope that this adds, in this moment of history, this traumatic moment of history, to the events of 1990, which it could be a lesson for many small and big countries perhaps, but more so small countries who are subject to being vulnerable to attacks of this nature that disrupts the democratic way of life.
Mr.
So
Dookeran,
I thank you for this opportunity. I hope that you have heard what I said, because I know there's some difficulty here in conveying this message to you through my phone. Thank you.
Mr. Dookeran, we want to thank you so much. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you all right. Thank you.
All right, beautiful. This is Shakira. I just want to thank you so much
Yes,
for your
Shakira.
service to humanity. because that is what you have done. And it was so important to have you here today and to have give everything that you have to say. And we so appreciate that. Okay. I have
Well, you're doing
Mr.
good work. And I want to help you do your good work.
Thank you so very much. We have a question here from Imam Iqbal Haidal. If you will take the question. So can you unmute? Imam Haidal, can you unmute to ask your question? While we wait on him, there was a comment made by Dayanand. So let me just see, Dayanand Ganesh Singh. So I don't know if he's able to unmute and extend his comments. All right, so I will read what it is he said. I think that in the lead up to the coup, either the Wednesday or Friday, I had gone to UWI, and on my way back to work, I was listening to the 12 o'clock news, and they ran a piece on Abu Bakr, and he was recorded as saying such things as he thought that ANR wanting to give a monument to Jean Miles as the person whom he described as a political prostitute was wrong. And he also said that conglomerates were increasing prices of grocery items in particular, and that was being oppressive to the people. So he's saying he's not sure if those newsreels are still with the media. All right.
Well,
So that was his comment of him, what he was believing to be the reasoning behind the actions taken.
if these, I didn't get the last part of the question. Is it that I know of the situation, it's a political issue that was in the air at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you asked me if I'm still.
If it's not, he's not sure if those newsreels are still with the media. I'm assuming he wants to have it available so that people can see.
You need to understand that I don't know if it's there. But I want to make the point that either the political circumstances and politics of the day, nor the socio-economic conditions of the country at the time could have found itself as a justification for a violent attempt to overthrow a government. And I said this much when I was invited at the University of Toronto to speak, and therefore there can be no justification for violent overthrow of the government. And there are such disaffection and discontent, there are measures by which they can be resolved within the democratic framework.
All right. Dr. Vereen Shepherd was asking, were those who were involved, were they taken to Nelson Island?
They were taken to Chagaramas, and they were there incarcerated for quite a while before the court cases started, and even beyond that. And in a camp that was set up specifically for this purpose.
All right. Okay, so I see no more comments or questions. So, Mr. Dookeran, sir, I so appreciate your time. I really thank you so very much for joining our program. So I'll let Shalama join back now.
Appreciate it. I'm sorry about this problem here. But thank you.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It worked out well. Much better. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr.
Okay, so thank you very much, Mr. Dookeran. Thank you so much, Shakira. I just want to say again, you're always a wealth of knowledge, and it's such a great pleasure to have you with us. And I think on this particular issue, we will have to probably have an entire day to have a conversation. there's so much more to unfold and unpack with this particular instance in our history. Thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fourth speaker, and this is Mr. Joseph Bertrand. He's a cultural heritage specialist who works with the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago as an education and outreach officer. In regard to our current discussion, he's the producer of an audio documentary, an important repository on the 1990 attempted coup called The Lost Tapes. Welcome, Joseph. So happy to have you.
Thank you very much for the invitation to speak, and thank you to all who have spoken before. Your comments and your experiences have really and truly shaped Trinidad and Tobago. So again, thank you all very much for the work. So where I would interject, I guess, or bring my voice to the conversation is through the radio, right? Remember, we had one TV station and that was stormed, and thus almost everything coming out of it in the beginning would have been the propaganda coming from Imam Abu Bakr. And one of the questions asked about Gene Miles and Abu Bakr talking about Gene Miles. That is still in the archive. So he did mention the statue for Gene Miles and so on being one of the catalysts for, I guess, wanting change, right? In terms of how, that's a whole different story. But where we bring it back now is the radio. So during the 6-day period, I was just about 3 months old. And my mother, being a new mother, and my father worked at the airport on shift. So what she decided to do was record the radio, particularly the broadcast of Radio 610. And with that, her motive was to give information to my father, right? A lot was happening at the time with the state of emergency, the curfew, and so on. And this being very new for her and essentially for the country, because the last state of emergency was 1970. So what are we doing and so on with this state of emergency? She decided, let me record the information so that she could play it back for my dad later on when he comes back, so that he can be able to maneuver what is happening, right? And over the 6 days, she continued to record as it went along, right? So when I became when she realized that I had an interest in our history, Trinidad and Tobago's history, I was around 11, 12 when she gave me the cassette tapes. And by that time, we were into CDs and into MP3s and so on. So I'm wondering, what is this old technology, right? But cassette tapes. And with that, I bought a Walkman and listening to it and so on. And the broadcast coming over from the team at Radio 610, Dennis McComey, Sharon Pitt, we had Gerard Lampau, Elizabeth Solomon Amor, Kelly Buckrady, they listening to them, Tony Lee, listening to them, they really kept me calm while listening and putting myself in the space, in that 6-day period of unrest and panic. But listening to them, we realized that the manner in which that they brought across the information, who they brought on air, what was said, how it was said, all attributed to keeping the nation calm. Could you imagine the one voice that you're hearing? Oh my gosh, drama. What would you and all think? Because at the end of the day, the radio, the power of radio is not that it speaks to the millions, but it's that it speaks intimately to these millions. So a lot of what my mother recorded through the 6-day period, I then listened to and cataloged and contextualized, and of course, worked alongside Dennis Mukwege to then contextualize each of the recordings in terms of the dates, what was happening, who said what, and how it was then broadcast. So major themes coming out of it: keeping the country calm, keeping the country informed. And then they also facilitated the conversation between those who were in the hostage crisis. So persons who were listening to the radio, right? We have broadcasts saying to the members of the Jamaat who are listening to the radio, could you allow for the ambulance to pass? It's coming in. Please don't shoot. And to the police, please don't shoot. The ambulance is coming. Those kinds of recordings as well. And of course, the emergency broadcasts. And with that, we also have recordings of the official broadcast of the state of emergency and the ordinance for the curfew. So all of those things are recorded, and then I put them into an audio documentary called The Lost Tapes 1990 audio documentary. So it is out on Spotify. I'm hoping that it could be just dropped in the chat for those who would want to listen to it. But it takes you through the 6-day period, but through the lens of Radio 610 and what we would have heard. So in contextualizing with Dennis Mukwege, he said that this is the first time he heard these recordings in 34 years, right? And he wondered if he would have said the right things to the nation. So 34 years later, he's living through it. And then to hear the conversations afterwards, he wondered if he would have said the right things, if he did keep the country calm and so on. So the audio documentary is out, and I just find that the work that came out of Radio 610 really did contextualize a lot of what was happening in Ground Zero, Port of Spain, the Red House, and TTT to the remainder of the country, both Trinidad and Tobago. So just that my short little piece. I'm not sure how long else I have again, but I'm open to questions.
Yeah, Joseph, so let me ask you,
Yes.
can you give us, first of all, I think it's important for us to hear the names of your mom and your dad, because this
Yes.
whole series, The Lost Tapes, is really as a result of them. Can you give us
Yes.
their names, please?
So my mother's name is Charmaine Bertrand. She was the one who had the foresight to record and thus keep, because she could have recorded and throw it away because
Yeah.
mission was done. She gave the information. However, she recorded and kept them, right? It's hours of music and information coming through and so on. So her name, Charmaine Bertrand, and my father is Gregory Bertrand. Yes.
Can you shed a little bit about how the coup affected them, apart from her sitting there and recording the information? What did she have to share with you about that particular period?
Okay, so her experience was one in flux because after 4 years of marriage and then to have a child, this has changed the way that their dynamic would have operated as husband and wife, now having to be mother and father, right? And with that taking me to my grandparents and so on, etc. But then we have the 27th of July. And for her, it was a very trying period in terms of getting food and also basic living materials. We were living in Arima at the time, and away from the epicenter, which would be Port of Spain. But it was very difficult for her and also for my dad in terms of operating with the curfew, being on shift, being working on shift. So she remembers him skating in for 6 o'clock, getting into the house here and the car screech and so on. I personally have no memory of it, but just listening to them with it. So thank you very much for that question.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Having survived and having listened to all the tapes and so on, do you have a sense of whether justice has been served?
Excellent question. Listening to the tapes, I hear firsthand what key persons would have said, including Imam Yassin Abu Bakr, because there is a recording of him on air with Dennis McComey. And in terms of justice, I personally do not think that this has been served. Also, in terms of the approach where persons who would have suffered out of much like what Mr. Dookeran would have said, there isn't really much that was done for persons who would have been directly affected by the coup, or the attempted coup, sorry. So I'm not sure if much
I think
justice
your
per
internet
se.
is
Yeah.
freezing sometimes.
Sorry. Yes.
So I didn't get your last point, but you spent a lot of time with Dennis McComey, and I
Yes.
remember in the years after the coup, Dennis McComey would have written a book and so on about his situation
Mhm.
and that experience.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about his particular expressions to you while you were working through this thing? Tell us how he felt.
Okay. So it was very challenging to deal with him and his emotion, right? Remember, he lived through this experience, and where Radio 610 was located was next to the old fire station, which is next to the Red House. So they were broadcasting live 24/7 from ground zero. So all of the gunshots, all of the bombs, etc., they would have heard. And also, there is an attack that they thwarted on Radio 610 as well. So they defended their space also, right? In playing back some of the recordings for him, he was able to say, yes, this is Tony Lee, this happened at this time, this happened at that time. And when we got to the recording with him and Imam Yassin Abu Bakr, it was a whole different kettle of fish. We had to stop, allow him to catch himself, and then start again. Because again, this is the first time he heard the conversation. He lived the conversation. But in terms of hearing it back, listening to his inflection, listening to how angry Abu Bakr got at the end of the conversation, very, very challenging to deal with, because I think there is still a level of trauma that he has to deal with. And as a nation, I think we still need to have conversations like these. Every time I speak about this to anyone, there is this need for a space to talk. So thank you all very much for allowing for this space as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Mhm.
Joseph. I just want to ask Dr. Mahabir at this point to shed some light on an experience he was telling me about that occurred in an area where he lived. If you could just give us some ideas to what it was like on that fateful day and during that 6-day period. Thank you.
Right. So what I remember about the coup is the fear in the neighborhood. I live in San Juan. I lived in San Juan. I still live in San Juan. I remember the looting. There was a supermarket nearby called Lucas, and the people in the neighborhood took maybe a pickaxe and burst a hole in the wall, and they looted all the items in that grocery. They took the cart, the shopping cart, and carted away the stuff to their homes. And nearby hardware too. There was looting. A lot of business spaces were looted to the extent that some of them moved out. They never reopened, and they moved out of the area. That's what I remember.
How were you affected by it?
Well, at that time there was fear because it was state of emergency, curfew. If someone entered your house and wanted to take things, you couldn't call the police. The police was busy. The army was busy. So everybody would have secured themselves in their homes, padlocked their gates and their doors, except for the looters. They had no fear. They were out looting. There is still the talk, maybe the memory of a man toting a refrigerator on his back. People took stoves and fridge and every possible things. I remember people looting and sometimes distributing nuts, these ground nuts from the supermarket. So it was a free fall.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahavir. I still see Imam Haidal's hand is up. Nisha, if you are there, could you please unmute? Imam Haidal, would you like to say something? You're unmuted now. Go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Are you hearing me?
Yes, wa alaikum salam.
Fine. But I wanted really to ask a question to Mirza Sahib. But first of all, I want to congratulate Professor Winston Dookeran for the role he played in that entire event. As far as I'm concerned, in terms of his character and his actions, he was the only true Muslim within Parliament. As far as Mirza Sahib is concerned, your former presenter, I think most people have said that this was not a religious uprising. I have a different view. It may be wrong, but the point is, all of them have indicated that there were 114 insurrectionists in that event. There are 114 chapters in the Holy Quran. And to my mind, each insurrectionist represented a chapter of the Quran. And to me, that is what makes it religious. And therefore, I would really like to hear the views of Mirza Sahib, who has spoken, as far as that is concerned, because I don't think it was just by chance that it was 114 insurrectionists. That was well calculated. That's my contribution today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Mirza.
Yeah,
Please
thank you, Imam Iqbal, for that interesting analogy. However, it may be a feeling and it may be something we deep down feel, but really there's no evidence in terms of, from an Islamic perspective, symbolic evidence that 114 or 30 or 55, how much it is. Islam doesn't really believe in numerology, but it may very well be that 115 may have been coincidental. There are other people who have done some mathematical stuff related to the Quran. For example, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim has 19 letters and there are 114 chapters in the Quran. And if you divide 114 by 19, you get a certain number. And it may very well be coincidental. And it may very well be a good feeling that you have. But we don't have the evidence that it, in fact, was purely of a religious inspired nature to do what he did. And I agreed with Professor Dookeran that it really didn't justify such an action. Whether the social economic issues were horrible at that day, it didn't justify it. But we don't have the evidence, and I go with evidence and facts, that in fact it was a religiously inspired event by Imam Yasin Abu Bakr, in spite of our feelings.
Thank you very much for that clarification. MK, I'm glad you raised your hand because I had a question for you. Let's take your comment or your question first, and then I'll ask. In your capacity, please unmute your mic. In your capacity as a mediator of international repute, I really would like your take on this. So please go ahead, unmute your mic.
Yes, I'm really very fascinated by hearing what Professor Dookeran said, that in moments of such tension, a high level of lack of trust, to speak calm and to ask for negotiation is very powerful, is a very powerful tool. And I'm amazed that he was able to play that role, to be able to listen to each side at time, to be able to calm people down. It's a very powerful source of energy. And to be able to have the presence of mind, despite his own security at that moment, shows the depth of his understanding and the depth of his maturity and wisdom to be able to do that at that time. And I noticed that this case went to the Privy Council eventually, where the amnesty was challenged. But I think that the Trinidadian government respected the amnesty, because if they did not respect the amnesty, then the credibility of the government to deal with these type of issues for future would have been compromised. So as a mediator, I was listening to that and I said, that was a very mature way of doing it. I don't know whether I, as an international mediator, would have had the presence of mind. Because when you're in a state of fear and worry and tension, people tend to do things without thinking. And there I must say that I admire the presence of mind that he showed at the time. It's a sign of great statesmanship. The second point I wanted to ask you is a question I would pose to Kumar, that when the looting took place, what was the nature of the looting? Was it racist? Because I've been through these type of situations in Kenya. I've heard about it in the 1980s, Madagascar at different times, South Africa at the time of Cato Maynard, that Jane Eyre may remember. It was always the so-called disenfranchised people saying that the Indians have got all the money. Let's rob them. They have made the money. They have exploited us. Was there any racial connotation to the looting, or was it just circumstantial that the Indians may have had more things to loot than the local people?
So I don't think the intention was race-based. Most of the looters were blacks in the neighborhood, and business spaces at that time were mainly owned by Indians.
Yeah.
So you go, you rob those who have, not those who don't have anything.
Yeah.
But I don't think the intention was race.
Sure. It's interesting because I just wanted to see the pattern. I've been in the diaspora, quite a few countries. In a place like Madagascar at one time, the story was that every time there is a problem, the Indians would get the biggest beating because they seem to have had all the money. Then you have in certain other areas where people would say, don't rob the local people's shops, rob the Indian people's shops, because they have made all the money on our backs. So I just wanted to hear that dynamic, but I think you've given me a very clear picture. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shalima.
Okay, thank you, MK. I think
Thank you.
it's mute.
Yeah, thank you all very much. I'm sorry, we're trying to work from the same room here and balancing the volume on different devices, etc. It's been an extraordinary conversation. And for those of you all who want to get some more information, I encourage you to look at the chat, and there you will find Joseph Bertrand's links to the lost papers the lost tapes. I think it's an extremely important bit of material to help you to get a better understanding of what actually took place during that period. So please, you will see the links on the chat, the lost tapes. If you don't get it off of the chat, feel free to go on the YouTube and look it up. The lost tapes of the 1990 coup, Trinidad and Tobago, Joseph Bertrand. I want to thank you all very much for being here. I want to thank our speakers especially. Thank you very much for your time, for your expertise, and for sharing your personal experiences. It's not easy to do that. It can be an extraordinarily traumatic it can be extraordinarily traumatic. And I just want to say that although I was much younger during the time, I was around for that coup, and it's not something we want to relive. So, Chand, I see your question there about the numbers and the casualties, etc. And the truth is, I don't think the number can ever really be ascertained properly. So thank you all very much. I'll turn you over to Shakira now.
Thank you, Shalama. Yeah, it has been an indeed eye-opening program. So we want to thank everyone for taking the time to attend today and to participate. As we've said earlier, this public meeting is being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center, and you can feel free to contact the ICC to publish your books. And remember that we are kindly asking for your suggestions, and if you give a donation, your name will be placed on our poster and all promotional materials, and you can contact Dr. Mahaber for details. So our topic next Sunday will be the opening of the conference on indentured history in South Africa. So we so look forward to that. We want to thank our planning and advisory team led by Dr. Kumar Mahaber and Shalama Mohammed, and our IT consultants, Daryl Gransam and Nabin Mangal. And thanks again to Daryl for designing the poster. So please visit, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all our past recordings. I am Shakira Mohammed of Trinidad and Tobago saying goodbye. May God bless you all. Dhanyavad.